Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, obviously part of the Bills Guys and the Air Raid, our podcast that airs every Monday night at 9 p.m. And I'm just here with you guys in the noon hour with my 7-round mock draft 1.0 that I'm going to walk you guys through in a moment using the PFF Mock Simulator. And I figured that over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do these pop-up shows after the Buffalo Bills make some moves. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills made some moves yesterday, a bunch of re-signings, a bunch of restructures, and then obviously adding Connor McGovern. So as the offseason progresses and as we get closer to the draft, I'm going to pop in here, chat with you guys in the comment section, and I'm going to roll through some mock drafts. So let's get this thing started. I'm going to pull up here my mock draft simulator. And let's first talk about what the Buffalo Bills need. If you look at the Buffalo Bills needs right now, backup quarterback still looms large. The Buffalo Bills still do need to add another running back to the room to go along with Nyheim Hines and James Cook. Obviously, wide receiver is a huge need. Do the Buffalo Bills look to go alpha slot? Do they look to add a speed guy? Do they look to add a boundary guy? A whole bunch of different options the Buffalo Bills can go for at wide receiver. A lot of smoke around the Buffalo Bills possibly wanting to add another tight end to the room, maybe go a little bit more 12 personnel heavy. That's another way to go about protecting Josh Allen. Offensive tackle, specifically right tackle. I really think that could be where the Buffalo Bills are leaning in round one, bringing in some competition for Spencer Brown. Obviously, they still need to add more guys on the interior. You need depth there. You need to have guys waiting in the wings there as guys like Mitch Morse age out. Sadly enough, despite all the Bills' additions in recent seasons, with Von Miller's injury and immediate impact edge rusher, which is something you're probably only going to get early in the draft, could be something the Buffalo Bills look to address. They need a one tech behind Daquan Jones so they could slide Tim Settle over to the three tech, and obviously Ed Oliver's a three tech. If for some reason Ed Oliver moves, three tech could also be a need for the Buffalo Bills. Middle linebacker is now sort of a glaring hole. I personally believe Matt Milano is going to kick inside. Terrell Bernard is going to be the strong side linebacker, but the Buffalo Bills still need to add bodies there in competition, guys who can start. What if Terrell Bernard looks like crap in camp, right? Like you need to have somebody. What if the Matt Milano experiment doesn't work at middle linebacker? The Buffalo Bills need to have other guys waiting in the wings who can step in and play if necessary. And then, of course, safety. There's Micah Hyde coming back at free safety. You have no idea what's going on with DeMar Hamlin. There is a glaring hole at strong safety, which is something the Buffalo Bills could address super early in this draft. So with that being said, I'm not going to lie to you. As we turn this simulator on, there are probably 3 positions I'm going to look at. 4 positions I'm going to look at in the first round. Wide receiver is obviously number 1. If one of the big time wide receivers in this draft class is sitting there, I'm probably going to consider it. The right tackle, Anton Harrison, DeJuan Jones, Darnell Wright are all guys who I'm going to consider the first round pick. Safety, if a guy like Brian Branch falls, I might even consider Antonio Johnson depending on where the board falls. And then last but not least, I'm going to have to consider edge rusher at 28, depending on how the board goes. If a guy like Nolan Smith is sitting there, I'm going to have to consider it. So let's get to it. Let's turn this machine on. Let's see how the picks fall before the Buffalo Bills here in the first round. As you can see, the picks starting to come off the clock. I'm a very impatient person, so I put it on fast. I do not do it in slow mode. So looking at how the board fell before us, in the picks before us, you have Jordan Addison going. You have 2 tight ends going before us. I doubt Minnesota takes a tight end, even though the simulator keeps giving them a tight end. They just signed Josh Oliver. They just signed TJ Hawkinson, or they just traded for TJ Hawkinson, but Bijan is off the board. Zay Flowers is off the board. And Osiris Torrence is off the board. So looking at the draft board here with the first pick, let me know what you guys think. I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to go the route of Deonte Banks. Nolan Smith is probably the most intriguing to me at this point. Anton Harrison is, I think, an intriguing option to the Buffalo Bills at this point. Will McDonald is a very fast rising edge that I think is available or an option for the Bills. Then you have Josh Downs, DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones is probably one of my personal favorites. looking at it, and again, I don't go by the PFF ratings, so that's not something I'm going to be following. Like, I'm not going to be looking for trying to get an A from PFF or anything like that. Assessing the options, my first thought is Nolan Smith. Like, I'm really considering a guy like Nolan Smith here at this spot, 21st ranked on PFF's board for what that's worth. And what I really like about Nolan Smith is not only do the people in the tape community love Nolan Smith, but he's a physical freak. And sort of his deficiencies are things that I think a guy like Von Miller can help him out with, right? Nolan Smith, all the tape people love him. He blows up the combine. What are his two knocks? He's undersized and he doesn't have a full nuanced pass rush repertoire. A guy like Von Miller is used to being a little maybe undersized for the position and has a full pass rush repertoire that he's known to sort of teach younger guys. Nolan Smith is jutting out the board for me. I think I would take him over the tackles. Anton Harrison, DeJuan Jones, Darnell Wright is down the board somewhere there. But I am going to look at a trade down scenario here because some people were telling me trade down. So I'm going to look at the teams who are interested. Philadelphia is interested in this pick. Arizona at pick 34 is interested, and Chicago at pick 54 is interested. So I'm going to see what I can get from the Arizona Cardinals here. And I'm looking at it. So what I want is I want pick 34 from the Arizona Cardinals for obviously pick 27. Can I get 96 from them? Apparently, the Arizona Cardinals really want to move up for somebody to get that fifth-year option on them. They're willing to give up pick number 96. So I'm going to offer them this trade, and they have accepted it. And I'm going to resume my draft here. They took a corner, which makes sense for them. But now Darnell Wright and Jalen Hyatt are off the board. But I'm sitting here and I'm looking. Will McDonald, Anton Harrison, Josh Downs. There are a couple of interesting names here. I am going to pull the trigger on Anton Harrison, the tackle from Oklahoma here. I think that this is a guy, and I'm trying to be predictive. I'm not going by my personal preferences. I'm trying to be predictive. I think Anton Harrison is a young, which sort of fits the mold of what the Buffalo Bills look for. High upside, athletic tackle. He's a guy who can compete with Spencer Brown. He's even a guy you could consider kicking inside to guard. He comes from a school known for developing offensive linemen, Oklahoma. The LA Rams have drafted a lot of Oklahoma guys over the years. Aaron Cromer has a good relationship with that offensive line coach. So I'm going to take Anton Harrison, and I'm going to bring in some competition for Spencer Brown at right tackle. And that's a pretty intriguing offensive line for the Buffalo Bills when you have left to right Deion Dawkins, Ryan Bates, Mitch Morse, Connor McGovern, and now Anton Harrison. You have rebuilt the right side of that offensive line. It allows you to sort of utilize Spencer Brown maybe as a weapon. He can be an extra tight end. He can be a fullback. He can be that sort of Bobby Hart extra offensive lineman. He can do a whole bunch of things. You can turn Spencer Brown into like a weapon, and he's super athletic, left tackle, right tackle, flex. So Anton Harrison off the board. The Buffalo Bills are now picking at their spot in the second round. This is where things get interesting. The Buffalo Bills have some options. Again, what do we need? We need a wide receiver. There's a ton of wide receivers in this draft class. I don't know if I'm taking Nathaniel Dell this early because he's small. I don't know if he's going to be anything more than like a gadget third or fourth receiver, even though I love Nathaniel Dell. Michael Wilson, his injury history scares me. The two guys that I'm more interested in, Tyler Scott, I know the Buffalo Bills have met with him. He's a speedster. The Buffalo Bills appear to be interested in that speed. He's certainly under consideration here. You have Jaden Reed, who I really like, is physically kind of like Stephon Diggs. I'm a big fan of his game. Cedric Tillman can sort of be an alpha. Reminds me of maybe a little bit of a less stiff Gabriel Davis. And then Marvin Mims is another intriguing one, a speedier guy who could also have that ceiling of a number 2 receiver. So there's a lot of receivers I like. So I'm going to look around here, and I'm going to see some of my other options on the board. And the first place I'm going to go is I'm going to go to safety. I want to see who's available at safety. Sidney Brown, Jamie Robinson are the two guys that I really like here. I know we pick again at 91 and 96. Are those two guys going to be there? I don't know. So that'll be super interesting. Looking around at possibly adding a one-tech defensive tackle. taking safeties out of consideration, getting a guy behind Daquan Jones, freeing up Ed Oliver and Tim Settle. Siaki Ika and Keanu Benton are still on the board. Those are super interesting. Linebacker is another interesting position to think about. We've taken offense, so like I don't feel as bad going defense. But if you look at it, linebacker's been sort of picked over. I like Namarvion Overshone, former safety out of Texas. I like Dorian Williams. I don't know if I like either of them in the second round. So it looks like linebacker, guys like Henley, guys like Campbell, guys like Sanders have been picked over. It's tricky. I'm kind of torn here between the wide receiver, the one tech, and the safety. And there's also a third option that the Buffalo Bills could go with here. And that's Sam Laporta, the tight end from Iowa. It is a deep tight end class, and I think the Buffalo Bills do have interest in adding a tight end. A guy like Sam Laporta could make sense here. We talk about protecting Josh Allen, right? Protecting Josh Allen is more than just adding better offensive linemen. It's about switching up your scheme too. And part of switching up your scheme could be going to more 12 personnel, going to more play action, all of these different things. So I'm going to have a little fun with this mock draft. I'm going to go a little bit out of left field here. And I'm going to take Sam Laporta, the tight end, out of Iowa here with this pick because I have an extra pick to play with. So I'm going to go with the tight end here. The Buffalo Bills now have two of them in Dawson Knox and Sam Laporta. They can go a little bit of 12 personnel. This puts a lot of pressure on Ken Dorsey. It does, because Ken Dorsey couldn't feed Dawson Knox the ball properly, and that's going to be the biggest knock on this pick. Well, you have one and you can't feed him. So the pressure is on Ken Dorsey now, and I'm putting the pressure on Ken Dorsey now, giving him another tight end to play with, another way to sort of mix things up if you're the Buffalo Bills and add a second tight end to the mix so you can better protect Josh Allen with some of these 12 personnel looks. You can better run the ball with some of these 12 personnel looks. So the Buffalo Bills undergo a little bit of a offensive makeover here by utilizing some draft capital on tight end Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Big yards after the catch guy too. I really like Sam Laporta. Personally, I wish that a guy like Dalton Kincaid could fall to the second round, but that's just maybe not in reality. So now the Buffalo Bills at pick 91 and 96, to me, in my opinion, need to address wide receiver and safety now. So looking at wide receiver, still have a ton of options here. I think the safer route to go right now would be safety. Let's see what's left at safety. Safety got picked over. So that sort of bit me in the butt here, right? Jamie Robinson is now off the board. Jordan Battle went off the board. Chris Smith went off the board. Like, man, there was a run of tackles or safeties there. And I swung with Sam Laporta at tight end and I missed at safety. So I'm not taking Jair Brown in the third round, even though I like him. I'm not taking Shamari Connor in the third round, even though I like him. Brandon Hill is another guy that I like. I'm not taking those guys this early. So this is what happens sometimes when you draft. So I'm going to X out of safety here. I'm going to look at some other positions that could be filled. We have one tech defensive tackle. Is there any defensive tackles that I like? I know the Buffalo Bills have been sniffing around Jacqueline Roy. He's sort of a one tech the Buffalo Bills could consider. But I think I'm just going to go here and I'm going to continue to add weapons for Josh Allen at wide receiver. Unless, let me peek the interior offensive line. You just peek it, see if there's anyone that floats my boat here. Andrew Voorhees, too early. Oluwatimi, that's intriguing, right? Like you can add a guy who is a safety or a safety net, a future center for your football team behind Mitch Morse. But I also don't know if Oluwatimi sort of fits what Aaron Cromer likes in offensive lineman. And I know you're going to hate me for saying that. Stop giving a crap what Aaron Cromer likes. What he likes didn't work last year. I get that. But in reality, the Buffalo Bills are probably going to look for more of what Aaron Cromer likes. I'm not sure if Oluwatimi fits into that bill. A guy like Tippmann more fits into that bill. So I'm going to go wide receiver here, and I'm torn, right? I'm torn between sort of the boundary guys and the gadget guys. I'm going to go with a boundary guy here in Jaden Reed, a guy who athletically comps very well to Stephon Diggs. He's a guy who can come in and be wide receiver number 4. He can work in with Shakir. He can work in with Davis. He gives you the boundary option to where you can kick Davis and Diggs into the slot. There's a lot of things you can do with Jaden Reed. So I'm going to take Jaden Reed with that pick there, and I'm right back up again 5 picks later. We have Gabe coming in with a super chat. I always appreciate you, Gabe. He says, Daniel Scott reminds me of another Poyer in the 6th round. I really like Daniel Scott, and he tested well at the combine too, so he's certainly going to be an option for me here. Looking around, still sitting here in the 3rd round, we've taken a wide receiver, we've taken a tight end, we've taken an offensive tackle. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to maybe add a linebacker to my group here. Overshown is now off the board, so I'm going to go with a guy here that I really like. I think he's a guy who could give you pass rush ability. Like, he's a guy who you could play at edge rusher, and a guy like Von Miller could work with, and you could use him as a designated pass rusher. He's also a guy that if you move Matt Milano to middle linebacker, he's a guy when you need to go bigger, when you need to go 43, when you're at the goal line, he's a guy who can play middle linebacker for you in goal line situations. He can play special teams. This is sort of a jack of all trades linebacker who I think could really contribute to the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to take one of my favorite players in this draft. I'm going to go with Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati with this pick right here over the smaller, more athletic Dorian Williams, who I know is getting a lot of love from people. So I'm going to take Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati here. So now if you're the Buffalo Bills, you've addressed sort of linebacker / edge rusher with Ivan Pace. You've added a tight end to sort of switch up your offense a little bit with Sam Laporta. You've added Jaden Reed, a wide receiver who I think has inside-outside flex, so that gives you a little bit of versatility there. He can develop into a legit number 2, I believe. And you've added a right tackle in Anton Harrison. So we still haven't addressed the safety position. I feel like this is now the time to address the safety position again. I don't really care too much about PFF ranks. I'm going to go with one of my favorite mid-round safeties in this class. I'm going to go with Shamari Connor, the safety from Virginia Tech. I think he does a lot of things that the Buffalo Bills appreciate. Converted corner, has played a lot of slot, nickel. He can center field. He can play at the line of scrimmage. So I'm going to take Shamari Connor here at pick 130. I know it's going to get an F grade from PFF, but I think he fits the mold of what the Buffalo Bills look for in a safety. And I think even as a 4th round pick, he could compete to start right away with whatever veteran we add over the next couple of days. So thus far, we have added a safety. We've added a linebacker / edge rusher. We have added a wide receiver, a tight end, and an offensive tackle. Looking around thinking, what do we do here now with 2 picks remaining? Pick 138, pick 204. You could play around. You could add a running back, guys like Dwayne McBride. Deuce Vaughn is still sitting on the board. That's an intriguing one to me, even though he's not maybe a scheme fit. I like what some people are saying here. Maybe this is where you go and you add some depth to your interior offensive line. You truly make this a draft where you focus on the offense, right? So a guy like Chandler Zavala is sitting there on the board in the 4th round for the Buffalo Bills here, or maybe the 5th round now, at pick 138. I'm going to go with Chandler Zavala. Do I think he might be a little on the heavier side for what the Buffalo Bills look for at 330? Yes, but he's 6'5". He's sort of more of a power mover, more so than a finesse mover. But I think a guy like Chandler Zavala, who had a really good Shrine Week, I know the Buffalo Bills were active at Shrine Week. I'm going to go with Chandler Zavala here to add some more beef to the interior. Now, does Chandler Zavala have center flex? No, he does not. But luckily for the Buffalo Bills, Ryan Bates does. And Connor McGovern does. So if you're worried about Mitch Morse's future, you could slide Ryan Bates to center in the future, and then Chandler Zavala a year or 2 from now can move into this interior offensive line starting position. So I'm going to take Chandler Zavala, a 5th round pick, who I think could develop into a starter sooner rather than later. So I'm going to go with Chandler Zavala here. That was a good comment from the comment section for Pops Mafia telling me to go interior offensive line here. So I got 1 pick left. Selfishly, I can already tell you where I'm going to go. Like, I'm going to probably go and look for a big fat defensive tackle, right? Like, I look at this defense and I'm like, what do I want from this defense? I want a linebacker, which we addressed in Ivan Pace. I want a safety, which we addressed in Shamari Connor. I want another edge rusher until Von Miller gets back, which Ivan Pace sort of fills that role a little bit. And I want a big fat dude. Like, that's the other thing that I want. I want a big fat dude. And Deion Hawkins comes in and says Kirkland has guard tackle flex. I'm a big fan of Kirkland. I could have gone there as well. Maybe he fits the Bills mold a little bit more too, size-wise, but maybe a little bit of selfishness came in with that Chandler Zavala pick. But I'm going to go for a big fat defensive tackle here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the one text. And again, this could fall apart when I see the board. But I'm going to go and I'm going to look at defensive interior here. I'm looking. Wow. So a lot of the big fat guys that I really like are actually gone. They're off the board here. But Nesta Jade Silvera is still there. Average draft position of 230. So he's the guy I would consider here. Nesta Jade Silvera. A lot of the guys that I usually like that are usually around at this time are not here. But I'm going to go veer off because, again, I'm not truly in love with that pick. You have some options here at backup quarterback here. Aiden O'Connell, I call him JV Jared Goff. Tyson Bagent, I know a lot of Bills fans are a big fan of Tyson Bagent. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Max Duggan. So there's some quarterbacks available. Again, the Buffalo Bills, unless they add something in free agency, still haven't addressed running back. Maybe beat the UDFA market and go. Eric Gray is a guy who fits the mold. My guy, Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota. Chris Rodriguez, he's got some fumbling issues. I'm not so high on him. Tavion Thomas has got a lot of LeGarrette Blount to his game. Cameron Peoples is a people mover. I think Evan Hull, in reality, I think Evan Hull is drafted already. If Evan Hull was still on the board in the 6th round, I would in reality take him. I just don't know if he'd actually be there in real life. So I'm going to avoid Evan Hull there just because I think PFF is lower on him than the NFL is. And then I'm going to look around. Could we add a corner? There's a guy there that I really like. Possibly. Ooh, there's a corner I really like here in Alex Austin. He's a guy who had a really good combine. This is another example of a guy who might not be there. But I'm actually going to go corner here. And I'm going to go Jay Ward from LSU. Not to play cornerback, but I think this is a double dip at safety. I think Jay Ward is a safety. I think his spot in the National Football League will be at safety. So I'm going to double dip at safety here because I didn't like what was going on in the defensive interior. I'm going to double dip at safety. I'm going to take Jay Ward out of LSU. You now have Shamari Connor and Jay Ward in the mix to compete at safety because it's just Micah Hyde and Zane Anderson right now. Like Jared Maiden is not it, right? Who knows what's going on with DeMar Hamlin? We haven't really addressed it in free agency yet. This is mock draft 1.0. I'm going to go with Jay Ward here. Switch it up. I haven't drafted him in any of my mock drafts on social media yet. So we're going to take a look at this draft when I'm done here, once the clock winds down, and we'll just do a quick overview of who we selected, and we'll just talk about some of these picks before we round this thing out here. But looking at the results here, PFF's not going to give me a good grade. I can tell you that right now. But looking over some of my picks here, Anton Harrison got me an A- from PFF. I think that's a steal. I think this might be one of those ones where in reality, I don't think this is possible that a guy like Anton Harrison could fall this far, but maybe one of the tackles, and it could be Harrison, slips to this point in the draft. That would be awesome. I think he's plug and play right away, replacing Spencer Brown at right tackle. With some of the extra picks we picked up, I got a little greedy. I went with Sam Laporta, gives the Buffalo Bills 12 personnel option now with Dawson Knox, Jaden Reed, inside, outside, speed threat, physically comparable to a guy like Stephon Diggs, can be mentored by a guy like Stephon Diggs. I really like that pick at the tail end of the 3rd round. Same with Ivan Pace Jr. I think he can be a maven on special teams. You're not going to want to hear that in the 3rd round from a linebacker. I think he could play middle linebacker in goal line situations, and I think he can be a designated pass rusher in other situations as well. So I think a guy like Ivan Pace Jr. in a weak linebacker class sort of plays a lot of roles here for the Buffalo Bills and can be utilized in a fun way on defense. The Buffalo Bills add 2 safeties in Shamari Connor and Jay Ward, who can come in. And I think both of these guys could legitimately, knowing how the Buffalo Bills develop defensive backs, could compete right away to start opposite of Micah Hyde. And then a more of a long-term guy, Chandler Zavala. Bates kicks into center for Mitch Morris in 2024. Zavala becomes your left guard to go along with McGovern, your right guard. So that's more of a projection into the future. So I've just did a mock draft. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm looking at every single player and I can tell you what their immediate role is and what their future projection is. So I'm excited about that as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what Brandon Beane does on draft day. And I'm not going to lie to you. When you trade back, it's a little bit more fun because the Buffalo Bills still currently have a lot of needs. because we haven't really addressed anything in free agency yet outside of Connor McGovern. And there's a lot of fun players in rounds 2 through 4 of this draft. So definitely more fun when you trade back. So I traded back in this situation. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Mock Draft 1.0. Stay tuned over the next couple of weeks as the Buffalo Bills make some more additions to the rosters. We'll do some more of these mock drafts, some midday pop-ins, maybe some early evening pop-ins. Some will be live, some will be pre-recorded. We'll see sort of as things go along here. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure tonight you check out the Going Deep podcast and Disguise coverage as they break down all of day 2 of the NFL free agency tampering window. And until next time, guys, go Bills.